So I haven't done a video like this for a while, but I saw a few posts recently, and I thought, well, I'll just put my thoughts out there, just so as much for my own benefit as anybody else's, so that I know that they're stamped there and I can access them again in the future and see if I was right or I was wrong. But anybody who knows me either personally or via my social media platforms will know that I am a hugely committed advocate for the responsible inclusion of electronic training collars when they're used to provide, to promote, or to protect safety and freedoms of dogs, other animals, and people impacted by the behaviour of those dogs. And I will continue to be like that. So I'm this side of the fence, having been very firmly in the past on the opposite side of the fence. But I just wanted to talk about a lot of the posts and videos and discussions and things that I see online. I'm not in groups or forums. I made that very, very deliberate decision a few years ago to come out of all of that. When I get tagged in things, unless it's something that actually directly affects the welfare of animals and it's something that I can use to promote people's understanding, to help educate people without that sounding patronising or condescending in any way, to help bring people's awareness up of the potential for harm for poorly trained dogs or irresponsible dog ownership, and the impact that that can have on the dogs, other animals, society, etc. I stay out of groups and forums. When I'm tagged into discussions or debates, I tend to stay out of it. I can't help it so much if I put something up myself and then people engage. And generally, I'll be completely honest, generally I block people who simply are there to troll, just to put comments, just to put their opinions. You know, I don't mind opinions if opinions are looking to engage in discussion and the discussion is happening for a productive purpose, whether that's to challenge something. I don't mind, as long as it's evidence-based, as long as it's coming from people who have experience, direct experience in what they're talking about, then I'm all for that. But where it's just, you know, somebody's ignorant thoughts and ignorant criticisms or insults or something like that, I'm not interested in that anymore. So I don't really like to get involved in much of what's going on, certainly on social media, in dog training groups and forums and things like that. However, there's a few posts that I've seen quite often. They follow a similar sort of theme, and I just wanted to say, right, from my perspective, so this is going out on my platforms, so it's my perspective, and you don't have to buy into it, you don't have to like it or whatever, you don't have to like me, that's entirely your prerogative. But I see a lot of posts where people are being, if you like, pro certain dog training tools, particularly electronic collars, but they're not exactly being honest about it. And a lot of that honesty comes from a place where, for some reason, as a society, we've become very uncomfortable with the idea of talking about negative consequences for negative behaviours. Punishment, if you want to talk about it from a behavioural psychology perspective, but most people think when you say punishment of beating and kicking and hitting or whatever. So general, it doesn't mean that at all. You're just talking about the loss of a positive reinforcer or the addition of a negative reinforcer. But anyway, negative consequences, something happens that is an unpleasant consequence of a dangerous or potentially dangerous behaviour. And we've lost the preparedness in society, certainly within the dog training community as well, to say there's nothing wrong with that. Because there isn't anything wrong with that. It happens throughout every, animal that lives within any kind of social structure, certainly mammalian structure, where there are social groups and group norms. There are consequences. There are positive and negative consequences. There are unpleasant events that follow undesirable behaviours. It's part and parcel of life. But because this sort of like zeitgeist has, permeated the dog training industry, then even people who are happy to deliver, well, happy is perhaps the wrong word, prepared, willing, accepting of the need to deliver consequences, negative consequences for such behaviours, have become unprepared to actually admit that, or unprepared to openly say it in, as sort of like as comfortable a way as they would talk about positive reinforcers, or pleasant outcomes for the animal. And so as a result, right, so that's a long-winded way of saying people aren't prepared to be honest in saying that negative consequences are necessary. Positive consequences are necessary, negative consequences are necessary. Anybody with an ounce of common sense knows that. But because people want to stay on the right side of social justice, or the social justice warriors, if you like, even people who have a platform and have the ability to be able to be that honest aren't being that honest. So with electronic collars, for example, and I've done this myself, right? So this is a note to my former self as much as it is to anybody who's doing this sort of thing or considering to do this sort of thing. When you present an e-collar electronic pulse and you present it numerically, right? So the lower the number, the better. Or you present it in a way in which it's perceived. So the lower the perception, the better. And then you tell people that this is how it is and this is how animals are trained. That isn't true. That isn't true any more than it is true if I were to put a lead on a dog and I were to put the gentlest of pressure on that lead in the most sterile of situations to be able to turn the dog and then turn around and present that as being how I train a dog with a lead, how the dog is required to be trained with a lead. It's not true. There are going to be times and there are going to be contexts where the pressure on that lead is going to increase. Sometimes it'll increase very, very quickly, directly in relation to whatever is happening. Generally, if I'm training the dog properly, I can control that level of increase in controlled environments so that I can mitigate that need. So that thing doesn't necessarily need to happen where it's as spontaneous as that, but it will happen. It will happen. And electronic training collars, they aren't designed to be positive reinforcers. I'm seeing people putting posts out saying that it is positive reinforcement. This is positive training, simply by virtue of the fact that you're pairing stimulation with, an external reinforcer, if you like, food, toys, praise, social engagement, whatever it happens with, water, exercise opportunities, whatever it happens to be, that still doesn't make that link in the chain itself a positive reinforcer. An electronic collar, the pulse from an electronic collar, is not designed to be a positive reinforcer, nor is it a clicker, nor is it a whistle. These are other things that I'm hearing people say, oh, I use it as a clicker and I use it as a whistle. Well, in which case, use a clicker and a whistle. It's a lot cheaper and a lot less hassle and a lot more easy to understand. But that isn't true. So there's one or two things are going on. Either it's not being put across truthfully, and I'd have exactly the same criticism, and people on, if you like, more inclined to listen to my side of the argument would hold exactly the same criticism for people on the other side of the argument when it comes to saying that the use of positive reinforcers is sufficient to be able to resolve everything. You just need to keep sub-threshold, you just need to increase your rate of reinforcement, you just need to increase the value of the reinforcer on offer, you just need to spend more time, be more patient, all of these sort of things. People would be quick to criticise that, saying that there are flaws in what's being presented there when it's certainly, when it comes to application in real life situations. But exactly the same argument can be used against people more on, if you like, my side of the fence. Not that I'm on any side of the fence, because I don't see there as being one. Certainly doesn't need to be one. But by presenting something as something that it isn't, or by flowering it up and glitter coating it, to use a term that Danny Wells said to me, glitter coating it, it doesn't do anybody any favours. It doesn't do the dog any favours, it doesn't do the industry any favours, it doesn't do the argument any favours, and it doesn't do the owner any favours. It doesn't do any favours to any other animal or person that may be impacted by that dog either. Because what you do is you ring fence an idea of if you like, workable usage of a particular tool that people become married to. They think, I have to operate within this range. It has to be like this. It has to permanently be this amount of stimulation. It has to permanently be this amount of pressure on the animal. The animal needs to find it this unpleasant or this pleasant. And things just aren't like that. That's why people get so many problems when they're working with tools, or why they're struggling to move on from particular situations that they find themselves in, because it's very, very easy to open your shop and to put on a display and show something to be very, very, inviting, if you like, pretty much non-invasive, pretty much effective in what it is that it should be doing, but it isn't honest. It isn't honest. And the more that people buy into this and sort of project an image that isn't representative of the reality, the worse things get, the less forward we become in our thinking and in our actions, the less progressive we become in our ability to help more animals and to resolve more problems and to achieve more successes. So if we are working with something that is inherently designed to be something that the animal will work to remove or avoid, a negative reinforcer, if you like, then we need to be saying that. You know, the industry needs to be saying that. The industry that is accepting of the fact that there are two sides to a behavioural coin, that life carries positives and negatives, that whatever you want to call yourself or label yourself, but those people need to be as happy in saying, as prepared to say that, yeah, a dog will find that negative. Yes, that will be a consequence to a behaviour that the dog wishes hadn't happened, if you want, in human terms. But me, that's the other thing on the human terms, me taking hold of something, which is something that I've done, and explaining how it feels and explaining how I interpret it, and how if I feel like that, then the animal must only feel like that, so it really doesn't matter. Those two things, it's completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. The only thing that feeling an electronic collar does is give me an idea of how I interpret that pulse from that collar at that particular time, under those particular circumstances. That's all it does. It doesn't tell me how a dog will interpret that, how every dog will interpret that in any context, you know, using any electronic collar. It doesn't tell me that. And even if it did, what does that tell me? Because if I'm going to say, okay, well, how would you like it? If you felt this, how would you, why don't you put it on your own neck? Why don't you let your own kids feel it? All these sort of things. And so our answer, and my answer as well, I've done it myself before as well, is to say, I will put it on my own neck. I will feel it. I will let my kids feel it. Whereas in reality, if you are going to come across with that argument, as in, you know, how would you like it if, as a human, if you were to have that done to you, or how would your kids like it? Well, the uselessness of that argument is exposed by simply saying, well, how would your kids like it running and hitting the end of a lead? How would your kids like it diving through bracken or gorse or brambles or into freezing cold temperatures just to retrieve a toy, or to go and find their lost ball? Or how would your children like it if I gave them a stick and I said to them, strip the bark from that with your teeth? How would you like that? How would you like all these things? How would you like it if I were to remove your internal, you know, reproductive organs so that you weren't able to have children, to decrease the surplus population? You can go on and on and on, but the fact of the matter is, it's a pointless argument. It's a pointless argument. It's far better being presented or having the defence that that is a pointless argument than it is trying to counter that argument with demonstrations that show that argument to be valid but inaccurate as far as the tool is concerned. So for example, okay, I will feel it then. I will let my kids feel it then. This is what it feels like. There you go. It's not that bad. Because, okay, well, let me put it on your kids and let me crank it up to maximum, and I won't tell them when it's going to happen. They can't take the collar off. They won't know when it's going to happen. They won't know why it's going to happen. They won't know how long it's going to go on for. They won't know what level it's going to be at. How will they feel then? You know, you can sink that battleship very, very easily, but the flip can be done the other way around as well, as I've just described, if you're using kids or people and dogs as comparable subjects, which they aren't. So the whole argument, whichever way you go with it, is completely and utterly moot. It's void. So what I would say instead is to be more honest, to be prepared to stand up for what you believe in, not to bow down to this, you know, pursuit of the public opinion. If you believe in what you're doing, do what you believe in. Show what you believe in. That is the way to educate people, not by sugarcoating things, glitter sprinkling things, pretending that things aren't what they are in an attempt to win people over, because that will be very, very superficial. And as I've just explained there in, you know, a brief chat to you, it can be destroyed very, very easily with, you know, a few sentences. So it's pointless trying to build an argument in that way. The argument needs to come from being, or our argument, people's argument, you know, who have the best interests of animals at heart, genuinely have the best interests of animals at heart, needs to come from a place of being honest and demonstrating that honesty and being prepared to defend that honesty. Anyway, there you go.